Clemson fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Sports Show, a victory edition of this episode, as we are going to be talking about Clemson's 30-24 victory over the Louisville Cardinals on Saturday night. Matt Connolly is at Cardinal Stadium right now in Louisville, Kentucky, getting ready to join us for this podcast, talk about what he saw in person tonight. Matt, what were your overall thoughts on the game, man?
Man, it was a fun game. I think it was interesting. Like, so we get the first two touchdowns to start the game, and that's happened a few times this year where had a little early fireworks, and then it's just a dull and a lull and no scoring for a long time. But man, it was a fun game. I thought Clemson's defense didn't play great. Dabo said it was their worst game of the year, which he said that honestly too many times lately. After games that the defense played its worst game, but they stepped up, made plays when they needed to. It's very hard to get a stop from first and goal from the two. Clemson seems to do it as well as anyone. I mean, they've been in that situation a lot and always seem to find a way to get the job done, and they did again tonight. So awesome game, fun game. Really enjoyed it. Glad I got to be here for it.
Yeah, and I got to give you some credit here because you picked Clemson to win, and you also said that Clemson's been accustomed to winning in close games this season as a part of the reason why you picked them to come out on top. I actually had Louisville coming out, on top of this game here, and I think they could have, had Malik Cunningham not gotten injured, but I digress on that. Matt, overall, in your opinion, what was the main reason that, Clemson was able to win this game?
Yeah, I mean, that Malik Cunningham going out was a huge part of the game for sure. That's something Louisville coach Scott Satterfield mentioned afterwards, is that he really felt like they lost momentum there. They were up at the time. They were driving, had a chance to go add to that lead. The backup quarterback, I believe it's Evan Connolly. Not related to me, spelled a little bit differently, but he's definitely not Malik Cunningham. Doesn't have the same speed, confidence, all that kind of stuff that you need to try to move the ball against Clemson's defense. I thought DJ Uiagalelei honestly was probably the difference. He stepped up and made some throws, made some plays that we haven't seen him make this year, to be quite honest. His touchdown run late in the game where Dabo said at first that he walked in and they said, well, I guess more of a hobble in. But that's what he did. I mean, he kind of hobbled his way into the end zone. He was playing definitely, banged up and playing through some pain. I know he said afterwards he's never been better, but I don't think that's really the case. I mean, he was clearly struggling. So, props to him for stepping up, making some big throws. Obviously, the touchdown that ended up being the difference on the run. I mean, he really played well. I thought Beau Corrales emerging, coming out, playing in the slot, finishing with over 100 yards. He had a big touchdown early. Did a nice job getting open, did a nice job on some shorter and intermediate routes. I think we kind of saw the potential that he has today, and why the staff has been so excited about him. The running backs, the running game didn't do a whole lot. Will Shipley was definitely banged up, definitely not 100%. He had a big kickoff return, but outside of that, had some trouble getting going. But just, playing through, fighting through. Offensive line did a decent job of protecting DJ. So, yeah, and let's mention, too, the defense. Andrew Makuba, the freshman on defense, I thought he made a couple of huge plays on third and fourth down when Louisville was trying to go score after an answered DJ's touchdown. So several reasons, that Clemson was able to come out on top and get a big win.
Yeah, I'm actually going to point out to that first drive that Clemson had, which they were able to get that quick strike, drive right down the field, get a touchdown. I felt like that response after Louisville's touchdown was huge, was crucial. And, Louisville could have easily been up 14-0 had Clemson not scored on that possession there, and who knows where the game would have gone from there. Let's focus in on DJ Uiagalelei because, throughout these episodes that we've done since the beginning of the season, a lot of focus has been placed on him, the struggles that he's had. He easily played his best game of the season tonight, 18 of 30 passing completions. He was able to pass for 220 yards, the most he's had all season, 2 touchdowns passing, 1 rushing touchdown. Even though he had a couple turnovers against Florida State, he strung together 2 really good games back-to-back. Matt, is this a turning point for DJ? Are we going to start to see the DJ that we saw last season against Notre Dame and Boston College?
I don't know that we're going to see that DJ, just in part of it's because of the way he's playing, and part of it's because of the play around him. I mean, they don't have a Travis Etienne for him to dump the ball off to. They don't have Amari Rogers, Cornell Powell, some of those receivers. They've just had guys coming in and out all year, just banged up at receiver on the offensive line. So I don't think we're going to see that DJ necessarily. But I do think we're going to see him continue to make progress. He's really played well these past few weeks. I mean, he's made a few critical mistakes, but he's also you can see him getting better and better as the season's gone along. He's definitely a much different player right now than he was against Georgia. You've just seen that improvement kind of slowly happening. I think Dabo said that he's finally starting to get through the storm. He mentioned he was kind of in a storm there for a while, and maybe the rain's starting to dry up a little bit and the storm's going to end. So definitely see improvement with him. And another big thing with him today is he took care of the football. I mean, the last 2 games, he had turned the ball over for the other team and given them a touchdown. That's huge. I mean, you can't, especially on the road, you can't win a game giving the other team a touchdown. And so, I think just protecting the ball, not having the pick six, not having the strip sack fumble for a touchdown, none of those kind of plays, not turning the ball over as an offense, I think is huge.
Matt, take me a little bit into that DJ to Beau connection. Obviously, they played together high school, St. John Bosco out there in California. They really seem to have really good chemistry. Beau had obviously his best game of the season. He had come in with 97 receiving yards, had 104 and a touchdown tonight. What did you see from them? What worked really well with those two?
Yeah, I just think that you can kind of see the chemistry that we had heard about. You saw it some in the spring game as well, but we had heard about it all off season. We had heard about it all summer that these two really had a good chemistry. We just hadn't seen it so far this year, but it finally was on display tonight, and I think you'll see a lot more of it. On his touchdown, he just straight beat his guy, just ran a great route, got open, ran right by him, had good speed. He did a nice job on some screens of kind of making a guy miss and making the most out of opportunities there. So I just thought he looked confident. He was playing fast. He was doing a good job of getting open, running good routes. He's been described as a guy who's very tactical, very advanced for this portion of his career. So I just thought he had a good game. And I know Dakari Collins is another guy who's a freshman who didn't have a catch. I was going to say, I don't think he had a catch, but he did come that close to having a touchdown reception, which would have been huge. And, I know Clemson fans are kind of upset that it wasn't called a touchdown. I thought it was really close. Kind of the consensus in the press box was that was going to be a hard one to overturn, and they probably wouldn't. But man, you still saw just him going up, making that play, nearly getting his foot down and possibly getting his foot down. I thought it was just a huge confidence boost for him, even though it wasn't a touchdown. But I think he's another guy that you'll see get more and more opportunities towards the latter part of the year.
Last thing about the offense before we switch to the other side of the ball, Matt, what did you think about that 4th and 1 call, down there, third quarter? It was their only missed red zone attempt. I have to give Clemson that. They went 3 or 4 in the red zone against Louisville. I think that was a big part of the reason why they won. But what did you think about that play call?
Yeah, I didn't love it. Honestly, I mean, I know Clemson's had a lot of success with the jumbo in the past. But I think you kind of have to have those guys that are good for that practice it a lot, that know what to do down there. And I just don't know. I think Miles Murphy was the guy. He was lined up at tight end who ended up getting beat inside and allowing the tackle right there. And I thought Root did okay from the fullback position, but it's just asking a lot of those guys. Christian Wilkins, I know did really well with that. But I think it's asking a lot for some of those guys to come in and run that formation for the first time there. So, hey, it's easy to say now if it works and they score a touchdown, it's a great call. It didn't work. It's not a good call. That's just kind of how it works, but I didn't love the call personally.
Yeah, either way, though, Clemson was able to score 30 points for the second consecutive game. I know last game they got 6 points off of a turnover at the end, but we're going to count it because 2 straight games of 30 or more points, it sounds a lot better than phrasing it the other way. But let's go on over to the other side of the ball. Clemson's defense. I had mentioned in the previous podcast, I didn't really like some of the holes that I'd seen. I didn't think they were going to allow this many rushing yards to Malik Cunningham, 134. But, you could definitely tell that there were some concerns, some issues there. Overall, what's your assessment of that side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, Malik Cunningham, first of all, is just really, really, really good. Like, better than I thought he was. He's so fast. Dabo said he was Lamar-esque this week, and I kind of was like, oh, come on, Dabo. He's not Lamar Jackson. But man, he definitely reminded you of him when he got out there and got loose. He's just so fast. I know he had 134 rushing yards, but if you don't count sacks, he had 175 rushing yards, which is incredible. So I know Clemson played Garrett Schrader in Florida State. Garrett Schrader from Syracuse, Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis earlier this year. Dabo talked about their ability to run the ball, but Malik Cunningham's just a different speed from those two guys, and was super impressed with him. But I mean, the defense made adjustments. They slowed them down. They made some plays. One of my bold predictions was Louisville would have 300 yards passing, and that they obviously didn't get close to that. But I thought that would be the case because I thought Clemson would have to. I thought Clemson would load the box and be able to stop Louisville, and they'd be forced to throw the ball. And Clemson really didn't do that. They tried to load the box. They tried to stop them, but they didn't do a good job of it. So, it's just. I don't want to say it's a huge concern, but it's a little concerning that we've seen at Pitt and then again today against Louisville, some open receivers, some guys, getting loose in the secondary, getting loose in the running game, just starting to see a few little holes in that defense that maybe weren't there early in the year. But still, I thought it was a pretty good performance overall, particularly in the second half.
This team is just so fascinating to me, Matt. I mean, they're the only team to play Georgia within 14 points all season. They played them within 7 in the season opener. And then you see games like this. If you were just to look at that performance against Georgia, I know they dealt with a lot of injuries since then, but it still surprised you that a couple of weeks later they played Georgia Tech so close. And then against a Louisville team that's kind of reeling in a sense, Louisville could have easily won this game. You talked about Malik Cunningham leaving the game with an injury, how that stalled a little bit of momentum. So I think the defense has definitely deteriorated a little bit to some extent. They're not as productive as they were in that first game of the season. But take me through that final sequence. That's what everyone's going to be talking about. They were obviously in that position earlier this year against Georgia Tech, having to prevent a touchdown toward the end. Take me through it. What you think about that 4-down sequence by Clemson's defense?
Yeah, it's just crazy, man. We've seen it so many times over the years. They just always seem to get that stop when they have to. It's happened 3 times against Louisville now. It happened a few years back. I think it was 2016, maybe 2014. 2016, obviously, but 2014 as well. Were just crazy plays at the end, and they've got a chance to score. Clemson gets a goal line stop, so. It's incredible. It's something Dabo says they take a lot of pride in is goal line defense. They're very proud of the way that they do that, their ability to get those stops at the end of games. You mentioned Georgia Tech. They've done it over the years against Notre Dame. They've done it so many times. Dabo said their kind of message is it's never over. It's not over until they get in the end zone. Keep fighting every play. I thought they did a really good job of just focusing and finding a way to get those stops. Satterfield was talking about they do a really good job of getting pressure on the inside, trying to flush you outside, and then Clemson's back 7 is really good. So you kind of have to scramble away, and when they do that, it's hard to find open passing lanes. So yeah, I thought the secondary too on that last play did a great job of just reading the play. It's a call that's very common where you kind of cut out and try to do a little pick play. Secondary did a good job of passing that off and getting the stop.
Yeah, I didn't really get that play call. You had two players running out wide. Those were the only 2 options. I thought it was a kind of strange call by Louisville, but in the end, Clemson played it really well, like you said, and they've shown in previous games this season and in seasons beforehand that they're able to have those tough goal line situations and come through on them. Matt, let's talk a little bit about the injuries. Of course, it wouldn't be a Clemson game if there aren't injuries to talk about. What's the latest on some of those guys who went out? DJ Uiagalelei, Kobe Pace, Joe Ngata. Talk to me about them.
Yeah, so DJ has a PCL sprain, which I'm not exactly 100% sure what that is. But yeah, I mean, clearly it was bothering him some. It's not something that's going to require surgery or anything like that. I think he'll get treatment throughout the week. It'll be interesting. I'm guessing they'll play him against UConn, but I don't know that you really need to. And so I don't know that we'll see much of them. I just don't know what you really have to gain against UConn, one of the worst teams in the country. So maybe he sits or doesn't play much against UConn. and kind of get him rested up for Wake Forest and South Carolina. But that's DJ. It's just something he's going to have to go to treatment for, but nothing too serious. Kobe Pace was knocked out with a concussion, so we didn't see him in the second half at all. Shipley got banged up several times. I shouldn't say banged up, but you could tell that he was hurting, kind of playing through some pain and struggling a little bit. That goal line stand, that fourth down where Miles Murphy and Root came in for the jumbo package. Shipley was unavailable at that point in the game. So just dealing with some stuff throughout. Joseph Ngata, Tony Elliott revealed that he had been dealing with a foot injury. I don't know for sure if that's what it was or not. It could be a hamstring. He's dealt with hamstring injuries throughout his career, and it kind of looked like a hamstring, but we didn't really get clarity on his. And then Andrew Booth was concussion protocol as well. Dabo said he had a stinger, but it was more so the concussion, but it was more of a precautionary thing, just making sure he was okay.
Yeah, and you really feel for Ngata. I mean, that young man has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, and hopefully he can get healthy, can get back on the field. Like you said with DJ, don't necessarily need him against UConn, but that Wake Forest game is going to be huge. Before we get to the Wake Forest game, Matt, because that's obviously the next game on Clemson's schedule that should really scare them, because UConn should be a pretty easy win. I want to talk a little bit about what we've seen from Clemson thus far. We're not going to go game by game, but we know they've played in close matchups pretty much every single game that they played this season outside of SC State. Within 7 points against Georgia, within 6 points against Georgia Tech, 6 points against SC State, 6 points against Boston College. Just so much close games that they played in. They could have gone either way. What's the real Clemson team? Is it the team we saw last night? Is it the team we saw against Pittsburgh? Is it the team we saw against Georgia? What's the real Clemson Tigers team, man? Help me figure it out, man.
So I tweeted that every Clemson game should just start like one team's winning by 3 midway through the fourth quarter, just play it out from there, because that's what it's been every year. I mean, we're just in a close, low-scoring game and just kind of seeing how it plays out. I think in a lot of ways this game was just just like every other game this year. It's been the defense has made probably more plays than the offense. The offense definitely carried its weight more today, though. Dabo said after the game that the defense has been there all season, and the offense finally was able to pick up the defense for once. So I think Clemson is a team that has an elite defense, one of the best defenses in the country. I know that it hasn't necessarily played great the last couple of weeks, but I do still think it's a really good defense, and has an offense that is slowly making progress. You're seeing improvement. It's just been kind of a slow process of just getting better and better as the year goes along. Not going to reach a ceiling, I don't think, this year where they're going to start scoring 40 points a game or anything like that. But we are seeing some improvement with the offense, I think, each week. And so I think Clemson's probably a little above average football team with a above average defense, probably an offense is at least getting close to average. And they're just going to keep playing games like this the rest of the year, other than UConn.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. They're obviously still in contention for the ACC title. For those who don't know about this wacky little rule, this wacky little setup that was made, the North Carolina Wake Forest game resulted in the Tar Heels beating Wake Forest, but Wake Forest still keeps their 5-0 conference record because there's just some weird things that went on to where they wanted to keep that rivalry matchup but not have it count as a conference game. So even though UNC's in the ACC, Wake Forest is in the ACC, Wake Forest still remains undefeated in conference play this season. I just wanted to make that known in case anyone was a little bit confused. And let's get to that Wake Forest game. We're not going to make any official predictions now. One, because it's 2 weeks away. Two, because, it's not really a joking matter, but Clemson suffers so many injuries that you really don't want to make any predictions now, knowing that there could be more injuries down the line based on how the season's played out. Matt, what are your overall thoughts on how you believe this Wake Forest game could potentially play out for Clemson?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is a really hard stretch for Wake Forest right now when you look at UNC versus NC State, at Clemson. I watched most of the Wake Forest game today. I think they're a really good team, a good offense, a defense that obviously allows a lot of explosive plays and big plays, which is going to be good for Clemson. With their offense starting to get better. And then the other thing I noticed is I think DJ is going to have a lot of success running against that Wake Forest defense. That's something Sam Howell was able to do pretty well today. Obviously he needs to get healthy. Maybe another reason to sit him against UConn and let him work to get a little bit healthier. But I think DJ can have a big game on the ground if he's fully healthy. And then another thing, it's interesting. So Wake Forest runs a very slow developing kind of read option type thing where it takes a while, where they're kind of waiting and deciding when to either pull it and throw it, quarterback pull it, whatever it may be, or hand it off. And so that's worked really well for several years for them, but it hasn't worked against Clemson in the past. And I think part of that's Clemson's talented defensive front with Tyler Davis, with Uiagalelei, Xavier Thomas, Miles Murphy, Justin Mask, all those guys. Clemson's really good at getting penetration in the backfield. And so that play doesn't work nearly as well if you're getting penetration and don't really have time to kind of set it up and read what exactly is happening. So I think that's another area where maybe Clemson's defense has an advantage over the other teams that Wake Forest has put up a lot of points on this year.
Absolutely. And we're looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. Obviously, the UConn game won't really matter too much in terms of the final result, because we know it's going to be a Clemson when we're expecting the Tigers to blow them out. Where it really mattered, though, is with recruiting. There's a lot of big-time players expected to be in attendance. Andre Green Jr. on his official visit, which is going to be really important since he's going to be deciding between UNC, Clemson, and Georgia a few days after that Clemson trip wraps up. And then also Trevor Etienne, younger brother of Travis Etienne. So definitely be on the lookout for that game in terms of the recruits that are going to be in attendance. Most of the 2022 class is going to be there as well. And then the Wake Forest game the week after should also feature some big-time prospects. Marvin Jones Jr., the number 1 overall player in 2022 class, is expected to be there. And we're going to be providing you all that coverage on ClemsonSports.com. If you all haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so. You'll get 1 year for $10 or 4 months for $1. You really can't beat that deal. I'm telling you this right now for free. You cannot beat that deal. So be sure to try us out. Try and get premium access to our Tigers Den message board. See what Matt Connolly and I have to say. And Matt, before we sign out, is there anything that you would want to say?
No, I don't think so. Been a pretty long day here in Louisville, pretty late tonight. So I think I'm going to head back over to the hotel and make my journey back to South Carolina in the morning.
Have a safe drive back, man. And yeah, we're going to be providing you all coverage from Monday and Tuesday press conferences in Clemson. So be on the lookout for that. Till next time, y'all take care. I'm Joseph Hastings for Matt Connolly. We're signing off.